just so weird to have a guy like that amongst us.
Yeah,
you know?
especially have him as your boss. In fact, he measures pretty much every major decision by whether or not it brings the day when we have a self-sustainable colony on Mars sooner or later. That's the prism by which he makes every single decision he makes it through that prism.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Well, also the lack of burnout, because he's been doing it at this incredible rate, 16 hours a day for how long?
His whole life, I think.
That's nuts.
I know.
And he's still hungry for it. Well, he's the next stage of humanity.
Yeah.
If people are evolving, he's like looking at us from the next spot. He's like, hey guys, I've got some ideas. He's doing so many different things at the same time. It's almost impossible. I don't understand how he does it.
Yeah, I've seen him do it, and I still don't understand it. But he's so driven, and he's such a smart guy, and he's really the most driven person I think I've ever met. I'll give you a story to kind of illustrate it. Once, when I first got hired by SpaceX, we did an interview with 60 Minutes, and they interviewed Elon and myself, and Scott Pelley was the anchor. He talked to us, and he said to me, "Why did you leave NASA and come work for SpaceX? You had like the best gig in the world, going up on rockets and stuff. Why would you do that?" And I said, well, if you can go back in time and you were a young engineer and you had the opportunity to like get in on the ground floor and work with Howard Hughes when he was like doing all the crazy stuff he was doing in his day, wouldn't you want to be a part of that? And Scott Pelley looked at me like with a deer in the headlights look, because I don't think he knew what I was talking about. But I was like, but then I realized as soon as I said that, like, oh my God, I just made a terrible strategic error. I compared my boss to Howard Hughes, and things didn't end up that well for Howard.
He went crazy, right?
He went kind of crazy. He became
washed his hands too much and
germaphobe. He was peeing in jars, and like his fingernails grew out like.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no, I really kind of stepped in it, right? So you don't want to say that about the boss,
right?
So it took a while. It was like months later. We were driving in a rental car, just the two of us, in Florida. We had a meeting at NASA, and we were driving back to the airport to get on his airplane to come back to LA. And I'm driving the car. He's sitting in the passenger seat, and I said, "Hey, boss, remember that time we're on TV and I compared you to Howard Hughes? I just want you to know I was comparing you to the young, dashing, starlet dating Howard Hughes, not the old, decrepit, peeing in jars, fingernail guy." It's all about the timeline.
Yeah.
And I was, and all I got back was silence. And now I'm really scared, right? And I'm sitting there like waiting for him to say something. And Elon will do this, and he did this on your show, right? He kind of like if you pose to him a serious question, he'll consider it, and he'll kind of go into this almost like a trance. He'll stare off into space, and you can see the wheels turning. He's like focusing all of his intellect, which is considerable, on this one question, and that's what was happening. So I waited, and then he turned back to me and he said, Garrett, I don't think it's an apt comparison. I said, oh, okay, good. Why? I'm curious, why do you think that? And he said, well, none of Howard's designs, as brilliant as they were, ended up really changing the way we live our lives. So we don't send, like he made the Spruce Goose, which is an incredible airplane. It was all wood, trying to solve the problem during the war of rationing. He said, we don't send our goods across the oceans in giant wooden airplanes. We don't do that. The H-1 Racer was a beautiful airplane, but it was a one-off. It never really led to a large designs that changed the way people live their lives. So that was his objection, was not that like I was comparing him to some creep, but that it's really important to him to have the legacy of drastically impacting the way all of us live our lives, the kind of the way Steve Jobs did or others that really move the ball downfield for humanity. That's what's driving it.
He's such an unusual human. I mean, there's very few people that you could make any kind of rational comparison to other than maybe Nikola Tesla. Will you really stop and think what he's done?
Yeah.
And the fact that he does them all simultaneously, that he's involved in the Boring project, he's involved in Tesla and SpaceX all simultaneously, and Tesla home, solar, all the solar panels and the making solar tiles for roofs, and he's doing so many different things at the same time. It's almost impossible. Like I don't understand how he does it.
Yeah, I've seen him do it, and I still don't understand it. You know, it's like I kind of burn myself out just trying to do one of those things.
Yeah.
He does all of them, and I mean, he does have all the advantages of wealth, which helps. You know, so like he'll have meetings with us, and he'll walk out of his last meeting, and he'll walk across the street to Hawthorne Airport, hop on his jet, and he's at Palo Alto in a couple hours, and he can be first thing in the morning at Tesla.
Right.
And he's got a staff that helps him, and you know he's got those advantages. But that isn't in any way describe what he or that doesn't explain why he's able to do what he does. I don't know how he does it, to be honest.
Well, he's the next stage of humanity.
Yeah.
If people are evolving, he's like looking at us from the next spot. He's like, hey guys, I've got some ideas.
Yeah, I mean, he's just an idea factory, and what's really remarkable to me is the breadth of his knowledge. I mean, I've met a lot of super smart people, but they're usually super smart on one thing, and he's able to have conversations with our top engineers about the software and the most arcane aspects of that, and then he'll turn to our manufacturing engineers and have discussions about some really esoteric welding process for some crazy alloy, and he'll just go back and forth, and his ability to do that across all the different technologies that go into rockets and cars and everything else he does, that's what really impresses me.
Well, also the lack of burnout, because he's been doing it at this incredible rate, 16 hours a day for how long?
His whole life, I think.
That's nuts.
I know.
And he's still hungry for it, and he's still taking on these new projects and new ideas, and it's just so weird to have a guy like that amongst us.
Yeah,
you know?
Especially have him as your boss. It was really weird.
Have you talked to him at all about simulation theory?
We never. The thing is, every time I talk to him, we focused on, and this is what he does. You know, he focuses on the thing that we are working on. So that's one of the ways he does his time management. That's one of the ways he is able to do all these things. It's like he doesn't sit around and BS with you about like what's going on with was it Neuralink, the company where he's making the chips that go in your head.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. That's the other thing he does.
That one.
He's changing the way humans interface with data.
He never said to me like, Garrett, what do you think about having a chip in your head? That like never. He doesn't do that. He talks to the people who really know about chips and people and putting chips in people's head. He talks to them about it. In fact, he measures pretty much every major decision by whether or not it brings the day when we have a self-sustainable colony on Mars sooner or later. That's the prism by which he makes every single decision he makes it through that prism.
Jesus.
Yeah. So he's got an idea, and he'll keep pushing, and you know, he gives us aggressive timelines that we have to work to, and we work really hard to try to meet him. It's hard when you're doing stuff that's this complicated to predict exactly how long it's going to take. So, you know, we end up often falling a little bit behind, but we do our best.